Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another edition of Gate 7 International. I am Kostas Llanos, or Kostas with a K if that floats your boat, and I am joined by none other than my co-host, friend, and fellow tabloid journalist, in that order, Dimitris Kouimtsidis. Dimitri, how are you, my friend?
I'm good, thank you. Very excited for tomorrow, Costa. Very excited. And we have a special guest with us.
Absolutely. We have a special guest, and it's none other than Chris Budd from the wonderful podcast dedicated to Aston Villa. Chris, how are you doing today, man?
I'm very good. Equally excited. Equally looking forward to this one.
Is it even possible to not be eating, sleeping, or breathing this upcoming semi-final clash?
Probably not, although to be honest, we've obviously got the race for Champions League as well, which I'm sure similar to you guys. You know, it's two teams who they want to do well in the semi-final, but they've also got probably one eye on the league, and you know, there's two priorities going on at the same time for both sides. It's probably quite even in that sense. It's not just about the semi-final. They've both got big games at the weekend in between the two legs and before and after, so all to play for both teams at this point in the season.
And of course, Chris comes from the wonderful podcast, My Old Man Said. Definitely, absolutely, guys, go show it some love on across social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. Absolutely give Chris all your love. And while you're doing that, of course, do not forget to like and subscribe here if you haven't done so already, guys. It really helps the algorithm to share the word of Olympiacos. Let's keep growing this wonderful international community. And if you haven't done so, guys, do not forget to check our all brand new merch, which is live and alive. Get on our website and you can find all sorts of Gate 7 International stuff. You can find lovely shirts, jackets, sweatshirts, woolly hats. What am I missing, Dimitri? Am I missing anything? Caps as well. My God, how can I forget this? You can
take pictures off and post them on Instagram. I don't remember the cap. I don't remember the hashtag, but if you post them, we're going to reshare them. We had one outside the White House the other day in DC. So let's get Olympiacos everywhere in all the big monuments around the world.
Anyone who's at Villa Park tomorrow with a cap, do not hesitate to send us your photo, guys. We would be very, very happy to see it. And do not forget to say hi to Dimitri and Chris. Are you going to be at Villa Park?
I will be, of course, yeah.
Absolutely. Show your love to Chris and say hello to our brand new friend. Chris, thank you so much for joining our show. Before we start things off, Dimitri, we had a question regarding the Chris's podcast. My Old Man Said. Could you fill us in on that, please?
Do you want the censored version, or do you want the PG version?
Well, this is not meant for kids, so you can just you can exercise your freedom of speech, my friend.
Right. Okay. Well, it's one of the oldest Villa songs, which obviously goes like many of the English teams sing. We were the originals. My old man said, "Be a City fan," and I said, "You can fill out the rest, or Google it if you want." So it comes from there.
Fairs. Okay, I like it.
Simple. Okay, fair enough. Well, we are definitely gonna have a look, and we're gonna ask you once the show.
We'll hear it at the ground. We'll hear it at the ground tomorrow night.
Well, we're also gonna ask you after we're off the air, but we cannot wait to find out. So, I mean, Chris, this has been a rather historic season for Aston Villa. You appear to be favorites for a fourth position, considering the difficult schedule ahead for Tottenham, who have to face Chelsea. They have to face Man City, Liverpool. They lost to Arsenal. No such thing as easy matches going on to the final few fixtures of the Premier League, but you certainly have a much better schedule right now. So when it comes to the whole season, how could you describe what you have enjoyed throughout this term?
I mean, ultimately, massive progress. Since Emery arrived, really, he started really well, which I think was so important sort of 18 months ago now. It feels a long time ago, but he hit the ground running straight away. We always felt we had really good players under Gerrard, but a terrible manager, and it was a real sort of rookie manager, and we upgraded to, as we called it, we finally had an adult in charge, and it kind of showed in the performances straight away. You know, we went on a great run to get into Europe for the first time in a number of years, and we kind of never looked back this season, even though we've had a lot of injuries to some really big players. I think there's probably been maybe 5 regular starters of the team who got us into Europe last season, like Mings, Buendia, Ramsey, Kamara, etc. And we sold Ashley Young, who haven't really kicked a ball for us this season. So in terms of it's the strongest squad we've probably ever had in terms of our depth. It's really being tested at the moment. But right through the season, you know, we've done the double over Arsenal. We beat Man City at home. We've had just the levels we've been hitting, and the consistency for the first time in a long time has just been right on point. We've had probably across the board all the players, and I think it's a theme for Emery wherever he goes. He makes players better, and certainly, you know, individually, we always felt we had the makings of a good side. He added to it with Pau Torres and Diaby, and he's got the best out of guys like Watkins and Bailey. Cons has continued to improve, and you know, we've always got a chance when you've got probably one of, if not the best goalkeeper in the world. We've pushed on, and I think it's always been the way with Villa, for better and for worse. We've been a club built around momentum. You know, when things have gone wrong, they've gone horribly wrong. But when they get going in the right direction, I think the belief that sort of builds within the fan base and the team, it makes us very, very difficult to stop when we get on a good run. And I think this season that's obviously what's happened. And maybe if I was being overly modest, I think we've probably sneaked in to 4th in a season when obviously the regular teams like sort of Chelsea, Man United, Tottenham have been a lot sort of not at the races, much weaker this year, and we've just been consistent over sort of an 18-month period now. So at this point in the season, it's not a huge surprise to see Villa where they are, and they are deserving of being in that position, obviously, you know, in such a competitive league.
With that in mind, obviously we're at the latter stages of the season. As you said,
Yep.
Villa have deserved to be where they are, even if the others. Yep. Even if the others were on the ball much more, I still think Villa would have been in with a shot. They've been really good.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So with that in mind, very simply, what would you rather? Top 4 or winning the Conference League?
Both.
You have to pick one.
I'm not going to. Would you not? We get asked this endlessly on Twitter, and I just think... To think at this point you have to choose. I just think that's just a loser's sort of mentality for the club to think like that. Like, we've got to, you know, we're not sort of like Man City and Arsenal. You know, you're not going to be necessarily in the top 4 every season. While we're in the position, you've just got to grab it by the bollocks while the opportunity is there. And the same with the European run, where I mean we came into the competition as favourites really, and I think Villa want to win. They want to win a trophy and they want to get into top 4. I don't think there's, in terms of the priorities, I think they're both there. Maybe sort of there's executives at the club and the more commercial side of the business, should we say, would definitely be saying, right, top 4 is the priority. But from a fan's point of view, who've been sort of starved of silverware, they want to win a trophy, but they also want to sit at the top table of European football for the first time in sort of 30 plus years.
And where do you see Villa getting as a result of if they succeed in these aims? What do you see in the future then for Villa? What would
I think
happen?
it's ultimately for a team like Villa with the financial resources we have compared to teams like Man City or even Newcastle and these sort of state-owned sides, powerhouses like Man United, etc. We have to be realistic and say, well, if we can aim to try and stay in and amongst that group, in that sort of big 6 group, I think that's an achievement. I don't want to sort of get too far ahead of myself and say, well, we need to be challenging for the title next season, or we need to be pushing in sort of up too far too soon. I think if we can maintain where we are, I think that's an amazing achievement for Villa, because we've seen it previously. Obviously, Newcastle last year, they got into the top 4 deservedly, and they've really dropped off this season. They flirted in the Champions League for one season, and there is potential that they won't even be playing European football next year. Same as sort of Leicester a couple of years ago when they won the league and then an FA Cup, and then they obviously a couple of years later they got relegated.
This is a funny situation we both find ourselves, in my opinion, because I've been thinking a lot these past few days about the factor of experience. When it comes to Europe, Olympiacos are more experienced based on the most recent years. Of course, you won a European trophy back in 1982.
Yep.
But Olympiacos are also finding themselves in an unusual position, because Dimitris and I are two very spoiled fans, because we're quite used to Olympiacos winning the league mathematically come Christmas, pretty much, and making it to the knockout stages of a European competition with barely, a sweat to break, really. But now here we are in the semifinals for the first time in Olympiacos' history, and Olympiacos are fourth in the league, within a strong shot of winning the league, but they have to win 3 derbies in a row to do it, after going through Aston Villa, who are our most difficult opponents in the last 2 or maybe 3 seasons. Like, in the last 3 seasons, they are our toughest opponents by far. And that's why we're asking those questions, because Villa are a bit rusty in Europe. And they're having that top 4 race, which, in my opinion, they are the favorites right now. The 5th position won't do any good for English football unless all German teams get eliminated without 2 wins between them, or a win and 2 draws between them. So it's going to take a miracle for England to take that 5th spot. So what can you tell us about the general mood in the Midlands and England in general ahead of this game? How confident are you? And what do you guys think about Olympiacos heading to this match?
Well, I mean, the UK view is probably Villa a relatively surprise package, but are deservedly where they are. I think people who like to see the sort of that big 6 cartel, if you want to call it that, broken up. I think people like to see that. And admittedly, Villa have done it in a way, unlike Newcastle. We haven't done it with sovereign wealth or a country backing us. Admittedly, we have spent money, but we've done it the right way. I think the view has probably surprised a few people with how Emery's done. Obviously, we had a point to prove when he came back to England after a disappointing period at Arsenal. Albeit, he had a really difficult gig there, didn't he? When he was taking over from Wenger, it was sort of on a hiding to nothing. And whatever he did, I think, was going to be a failure unless he kind of won in the league, which they weren't going to do with that team. In terms of the sort of our fan base, everyone's really confident at the moment. We're on such a good run of form. We've got so many sort of kind of weapons that we can throw at an opposition. We didn't actually play very well in either leg against Lille, but we still got through. The second leg we were bloody awful, to be honest, at times, but there's always a feeling that Villa will always score, will always make chances, will always find a way to score. And when it went to penalties, it was kind of, you're fairly confident with Martinez in goal, because it's kind of what he does, it's what he does, it's his bread and butter. And it's a shame that he won't be playing in the first leg. It'll be big that he should be back for the second leg. Obviously, he's suspended and he's had a slight knock after the weekend. Olsen came in the second half, but it shows the depth that we've got really now, that although nobody's going to ever be at the level of Martinez, you're still bringing in an international goalkeeper. We've got the Swedish number 1 coming in as the number 2. It just shows the depth that both Villa, and I think generally you see in that probably the financial disparity between the Premier League and pretty much every league in Europe, let alone the Greek league. Teams in France, Spain, no one can have a bench of international players, which Villa kind of do, albeit at the moment pretty injury depleted. So I think in terms of the first leg and the tie, Villa are confident, but also quite respectful. I think similar to, because we've kind of had these trips away from home in Europe, where we've gone to Warsaw, we've been to Ajax, we went to Lille, where the atmosphere was quite heated. And obviously, I've seen videos and endless amounts of stuff on Instagram of the Olympiacos supporters and the amazing support you guys have at home. And I'm sure you'll bring a small little army over to Birmingham. But I think there's a general feeling amongst me and a lot of the guys around me that we want to really do the heavy lifting at Villa Park where possible. We don't really want to be going over to Greece level or behind in the tie. Whereas I think if we can go over there with something to hold on to, I think we're more than good enough. For example, I think if you have to chase the tie too much, we're devastating on the counter-attack. And probably, I don't know if that's the attitude from sort of you guys, where it's, you've had such a kind of wacky back and forth kind of season with another couple of managers, 4 managers in 2 years. You've had an endless array of sporting directors and about 60-odd players you've signed. It's just, I don't even know what half the players who play for you at any given time, because it seems to change all the time. But it seems that since sort of this side of Christmas and the second half of the season, you've really hit a formula with a manager, and it's kind of working now. And it's sort of two sides who are probably thinking, well, we don't quite know which version of either team's going to turn up on the night. I think if Villa turn up and play well, it's a very difficult tie for you. But if Villa don't play well, I think especially the away leg, it can be a really, really horrible place for Villa to go, because you're kind of playing against 11 players and 12 with obviously the fan base behind the team.
Obviously, Villa being in the Prem and being a historically big club, people around the world know about them, even a little bit. Obviously, Olympiacos, even though they're the biggest team in Greece, doesn't mean that people know much about them. So my question would be is, how much do you know about us outside of obviously the fans, because they're quite famous, the atmosphere, and the changing managers, and if you had to pick out any players that sort of worry you, or you think, oh, this could be that we could attack this, so either a strength or a liability that Olympiacos have, just off the top of your head as an opposition fan.
I mean, I think that the other thing that obviously a lot of fans know about Olympiacos is because of the Nottingham Forest connection. We know about the owner and all of his sort of antics, but which, I mean, I think is really funny, to be honest. He's certainly box office entertainment, and I'm sure for you guys as journalists, he's just an endless stream of quotes and antics and all sorts. In terms of on the pitch, most Villa fans obviously closer to home will know Podence, because he was at Wolves for a while. He's actually tended to have a reasonably good record against Villa as well. So he's probably the one
screamer about a year ago, didn't he?
Yeah, it was a great goal. I mean, I'm surprised because he was at you before. He obviously played for Olympiacos before, right? And then came to Wolves and went back. I was sort of surprised he either didn't stay put or go elsewhere, to be honest. That was sort of a surprise move for me, because I thought he was a good player for Wolves. He's probably the danger man. You guys have got 2 suspensions, right, for the first leg. Obviously, Villa have got
Andreas Doi and Yorgos Masouras is a suspension.
Yeah. So I think in terms of defensively, I think Villa will be fairly confident we can score. I think not the fear as such. Is the concern is that obviously we're bringing in Olsen, who hasn't played a lot of games, as a number 2 goalkeeper, and therefore, as I said, not the fear, but the question, I suppose, is how positive will Olympiacos be coming to Villa Park? Will it be park the bus, keep it tight, try and hit us on the break, or will they come to Villa Park and actually really try and have a go at Villa? Because it normally goes one of 2 ways for teams who come to Villa and have a go. They either get a bit of joy and play very aggressively and knock us off our sort of rhythm, because the way we play is very methodical, and if once we get into a rhythm, it's quite hard to stop. Or teams like Brighton, for example, and when we played Arsenal the other week, they tried to go after our back line but left themselves open in midfield. And I think as soon as Villa play through your first phase of press, you're in trouble. And you've seen that in the way that we score goals. We're not scoring goals with 30-yard rockets or anything like that. We're going to just pass through you and we'll rip you apart. With guys like Bailey, Diaby, Watkins, we're so mobile in the forward line. And we've got power in McGinn in the middle of the park. Obviously, the new lad, Morgan Rogers, has just come in. He's added some height and a little bit more power to the middle, where we were missing Kamara. It's going to be really interesting, because I've seen a lot of the results and I've seen lots of the highlights of Olympiacos, certainly in Europe. I mean, the comeback game was just bonkers. It's kind of like, as I said, it could go any way, this one. I think if you guys turn up and aren't at it defensively, Villa could run riot. I don't honestly think that will happen, if I'm honest. I actually expect it to be quite a tight game, but I do wonder how much Olympiacos will think, let's go to Villa Park, let's try and be positive, or if it's sort of not damage limitation, but do we sort of go to Villa Park in the first leg, try and keep it tight and give ourselves a really good shot in the second leg, knowing that it's going to be a really difficult atmosphere for Villa to play in. And Villa, on their travels in Europe, have been nowhere near as strong. Obviously, we've got 100% record at Villa Park. And that's my kind of, I suppose, my question back to you guys is, how ambitious do you think your guys are going to be coming to Villa Park? Obviously, I think in a second leg, you'd have a right good go anyway, and the fans would demand that. But do you think the fans would demand that they really have a go at Villa, or keep it a little bit tighter and be a slightly more cagey match?
Well, I mean, the fans of Olympiacos always want Olympiacos to have a go at anyone who is
Right.
who they're facing. Doesn't matter if it's Apollon Calamarias or Real Madrid. Um, when it comes to Podence, we should mention that he has contributed 2 goals in all of his 4 appearances against Aston Villa. That is a goal and an assist. It was that wonder goal that Dimitris
Yeah.
mentioned as
It's a really good
well.
goal.
It was a fantastic goal. He's on loan at Olympiacos right now. He does love Olympiacos. He does have a very, very soft spot for Olympiacos. He is a star at Olympiacos, an absolute superstar at Olympiacos, which is a club that has formed a very strong pedigree by making it to the knockout stages of a major European competition 14 times in their last 16 attempts. And like you said, I mean, Olympiacos also are not a team owned by mega rich states or, Saudi, Qatari, Abu
Yeah.
Dhabi, super rich owners. They are owned by a very Greek person with a very Greek budget behind him. And without any, world-class players. Well, to be honest with you, Jose Luis Mendilibar joined Olympiacos in February, and he turned everything almost instantly. He turned everything around almost instantly. Just when it was all seemed to be lost after one of Olympiacos's worst starts to a season ever. Now, under Jose Luis Mendilibar, Olympiacos are facing the prospect of their greatest ending to a season of all time. They're 3 wins away from winning the title, and they are eyeing their first ever European title, albeit quite unlikely, especially with that semi-final opposition. What I think is going to happen right now, the way Olympiacos are going to approach this match, I feel like it's very fair for all Aston Villa fans to know that Olympiacos are going to Villa Park for 3 results. 3 results are more than enough for Olympiacos. The perfect result would be a victory, obviously. A very good result would be a draw.
Yeah.
And if Olympiacos lose by only 1 goal, 2-1, 3-2, 1-0, etc., 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 that is a good result. Because then you're going to Greece, to the Georgios Karaiskakis Stadium, a fiery place, a very intimidating place. You mentioned Lille, you mentioned Ajax, you mentioned Alkmaar. All due respect to all those clubs, I don't think they are as fiery as Karaiskaki. This is the same place where Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal repeatedly, West Ham, and Burnley all lost. So Olympiacos' absolute minimum priority, not the priority, the minimum priority is to manage the score line. You lost, okay, just keep it to a 1 goal difference. If it's a 2-goal difference, then the chances are not going to be as good as Karaiskaki, let alone if it's more than that. But yeah, Olympiacos, in my opinion, they will be playing for those 3 different results. What do you think, Dimitri?
I completely agree regarding the results. I mean, look, realistically, it's what you said, Chris. Villa are scoring. They're going to score. We are, even though Jose Luis Mendilibar has done a brilliant job since he's come in, a fantastic job actually. I'm being too.
Because he did a good job already, didn't he? At Sevilla, he'd obviously won the.
He came in halfway through and won it. Yeah. So, but the thing is, defensively, even though he's known for playing like very robust defensive sides that are just organized, he's known for that. He hasn't managed to do that yet with our team. He solved other issues, but defensively we still have liabilities. It tends to be individual liabilities, individual mistakes.
Right.
Like the game against Fenerbahce, the first leg, we were 3-0 up, and then a stupid penalty, and then boom, 3-1, and then they score another because they've got momentum. So, and we tend to do that a lot. We've done that in when we lost 3-2 to Freiburg at home. 2 of the 3 goals that they scored at the start of the season were gifts. When we drew 2-2 in Serbia against Topola, we were 2-0 up. One of our defenders gets a red card. Boom, 2-2.
Excuse me to interrupt, though. I think it's important for Chris and the Aston Villa fans this. There's two kinds of Olympiacos this season. There's the before José Luis Mendilibar, the after José Luis Mendilibar.
Yeah.
The before José Luis Mendilibar, though, is it's almost erased completely. You're very right to mention Freiburg and Batska, Dimitri. I just want to clarify that this is a completely different Olympiacos side. Over to you again.
Yeah, no, Costa is right. But that defensive issue, the defensive individual liabilities, in my opinion at least, have stayed even after Mendilibar has come in. So that pretty much, in my eyes, guarantees Villa scoring. Now, the issue is, it's what Costa said. Can it stay at a 1-0, at a 2-1? I'm not as worried that we won't be able to score. I think offensively we're decent. We're quite good. I reckon we can give you guys a run for your money. It's whether defensively can we keep it to a 1 or 2 goal scoreline for Villa. Can we limit you guys to 2 goals at Villa Park and us score 1 or 2 goals? Basically, that's my eyes, because I'm positive. I feel good that we can score tomorrow, but I don't think we're going to score 2 or 3. Do you know what I mean? So if we score 1, great. Yeah. But at the same time, if we conceded 4, problematic. So that's where it lies for me. That's where the balance lies. And then, as Costa said, if we take that result where it's possible for us to actually qualify, then it makes a big difference, because what you want is the crowd to have that belief, right? You don't just want the crowd to go there next Thursday in Greece and clap the players out of support for an incredible comeback in Europe season, because even if we lose 4 or 5-0, the fans next week, they're going to be appreciative of what these players have done, how they've managed to turn it around, how it's been a historical season. However, if it's a 1 or 2 goal lead situation, then the fans are going to be like, oh shit, we believe we can actually do this. And this is what a lot of us think. Like, you're so close to it, you might as well believe you can do it, because this is the best chance we've ever had. Like, it needs,
and it's probably similar with the Villa fans, to be honest. That there's probably, I think the expectation is, of course, that Villa want to get through this one. I think that there was a view that, obviously because our game finished in Lille early, we were watching the sort of the very end of the game in Istanbul a couple of weeks back, and everyone was sort of wondering, well, who do you want out of this one, and who is the better team? And no one really knew, because Fenerbahce they're sort of quite equally difficult places to go away from home, especially in a second leg. Obviously, I think if the Villa Park game was the second leg and we had to travel in the first leg, I'd probably be saying a similar thing to you guys, to be honest, that, stay in the tie, don't lose it in the first leg, because you can't win it. But I think Villa are kind of confident that, we can cause anybody problems. We've caused Arsenal all sorts of problems. We played Man City off the park earlier in the season. It's ultimately the impetus is on Villa, isn't it, in the first leg, to go and win the tie and sort of try and get the job done as best they can. Because I don't particularly want to be, as you guys said, you don't want to be going away from home in the second leg knowing you've got to either chase the tie. And I'd rather we didn't have to shut up shop, to be honest, because it doesn't really suit how we play. We were 2-0 up going into the last 10 minutes in the quarterfinal against Lille, and we conceded a stupid goal, and it kind of popped the crowd like a bubble, because they sort of felt like it was a little bit predictable. And then it was the prospect of having to go away from home only with a 1-goal lead. And obviously you saw how that went down in the second leg. It was amazing for the neutral to watch, but for Villa fans, quite stressful. And we didn't really play well over either leg. So I think Villa will be conscious of that the way Lille set their team up really stifled Villa, especially in the second leg. I don't know whether you guys will be able to sort of shut the game down as much.
So you wouldn't be happy necessarily with a 1-0 with a 1-goal lead, even if you guys win. So you want a larger margin. If it's a 1-goal lead,
as everybody does, you want to go away from home with the best chance possible. I think a 1-goal lead, you're still in the tie. I think a 2-goal lead against Villa, because of the way we play on the counter attack, and you have to attack at that point, it becomes difficult for you. Not because I'm actually equally confident as you are that you would score, but I'm also pretty confident we would. I mean, we were terrible in Lille and we still got a goal. And we normally do scoring games. So I think we would fancy ourselves to go away from home and actually get another goal. And then, of course, it makes the tie difficult.
I think what we're trying to say is because the fact that you also have this let's still call it is a heated top 4 race. Okay, I mean, if
The
Tottenham
job's
win
definitely
their
not
game,
done yet. It's not done yet. So
if Tottenham win their 2 games in hand, then you are only a point ahead. Although they have Liverpool, they got City, they got Chelsea, who proved against you that they're down, but definitely not out. But what we're trying to understand here is that it would be much preferable for Villa to wipe Olympiacos out in the first leg. I expect a strong lineup. I expect Olsen in goal, Luca Dean, obviously, Ezri Konsa with Pau Torres at center back. Remind me again, who's the right back who starts all the time?
it'll be Matty Cash, but they might
Cash.
play. They might play Konza at right back in this one and Carlos at centre back, because they might push Cash into midfield with this one, because obviously Tielemans is injured.
Yes, absolutely. So we're kind of thinking we're kind of thinking of a 4-4-2 with Cash at right back and Dean on the other side. With, like I said, Torres and Konsa at centre back with Olsen in goal, and then obviously Douglas Luiz with McGinn in midfield. Then out wide, Leon Bailey and Diaby, of course, yeah. And then Watkins with who do you expect to be up front with him?
I don't think they'll play 4-4-2. They'll definitely play a back 4. I'd imagine they'll play Luiz and McGinn just in front of the back line. They'll probably play 3 off Watkins. So they'll play Watkins as a lone striker. And then they'll probably play Bailey, Diaby and Morgan Rogers. At the heart of that 3 will come in. And the team pretty much picks itself in the forward line at the moment with our injuries. Defensively, obviously, we've got Longley and Diego Carlos, who we can bring in. I don't know whether he may push, as I said, Konza out to right back. Cash will get moved up into midfield. I think he'll go positive, though, and he'll probably play Diaby and Bailey off Watkins, knowing that we've obviously got Zaniolo should be back for this game, and so he'll be on the bench.
Okay, let's go through the injury list. You did say you do have quite not a long injury list, nothing like Manchester United or something like this. Olympiacos, like we said, Olympiacos are at full strength, bar those 2 suspensions in Doi and Masouras.
Are they big players for you?
Masouras is way bigger than Doi.
Right. Doi is our third choice centre back, and Masouras is our heart and soul winger. Yeah, second choice winger, but the heart and soul, like the hustle player, the one who comes in who is gonna put in the tackles and put in the effort. Sean Dyche, sort of proper Brexit football player.
Right.
That kind of guy, the guy you want to bring the energy. So he's going to be a miss, I think, in my opinion.
Got you.
In the second leg, of course. But let's go through the injuries. You got Boubacar Kamara. We have Emi Buendia, Tyrone Mings, obviously. Horrible injury for Mingsy. Jacob Ramsey. Alex Moreno. Nicolo Zaniolo. What kind of info do you have about Zaniolo? Well, Martinez is suspended. He got injured. And I want some info on Zaniolo, Martinez, and Tielemans right now. What is the fitness latest that you have?
So my understanding is Zaniolo will be on the bench. He won't start, but he should be back for this one. Tielemans won't play. He's got a very small groin injury, but he'll be back for the second leg. Martinez, they expect to play in the second leg. He won't play in this one. He wouldn't have anyway, obviously, because he somehow managed to get 3 yellow cards and not get sent off. Well, he obviously got 2.
It's the rule.
Yeah,
it's the rule in the penalty shootout.
And he got obviously booked in the first leg against Lille, so he got 3 yellows and got suspended. Fine. It's probably worked out quite well for him. It's, if you were going to get an injury, get it now when you're suspended anyway. So he won't play in the first leg, which is a loss. Kamara, Mings, Buendia, they all had ACL injuries, which is terribly bad luck. I mean, I've never known it in my 30 plus years of supporting Villa to have 3 injuries like that in one season. That's really bad. Tielemans, I think, will play in the second leg. Alex Moreno, I think, should be back for the second leg, but he'll probably be on the bench. Zaniolo will be on the bench. So Villa are weakened in this leg, but will be coming over to Athens with probably 3 or 4 guys back in the squad, albeit obviously the heavy hitter guys like Mings, Buendia. Kamara's the big loss for me, because to be frank, Buendia hadn't kicked a ball all season and Mings played about half an hour of the first game. So we haven't actually, even though they're huge players for us, we haven't actually missed them Jacob Ramsey was a big player for us last year, has barely kicked a ball this year. The fact that we signed Rodgers in January and he's come in and been probably better than we all expected has been a bonus, to be honest. He certainly gives us more physical power. He's sort of 6'3", big lad, but he's quick as well. And I think he's one of those guys who he can kind of just punch through your midfield a little bit more individually rather than with pace. So while we've got injuries, we've tended to deal with it pretty well, and we've still got, the fact that we can have Mings injured for the whole season, and you're still bringing in Clement Longley as an international player, and Diego Carlos, who's played Champions League football for Sevilla as well. The depth in Villa's squad is great. It's more further forward. Obviously Duran will be on the bench, and he's a handful, but it's a big difference to having Ollie Watkins, who, his pace, the way he hustles in the game, and his sharpness. He's probably one of the best strikers in the Premier League this season. So it'll be a handful for the Olympiacos backline.
You touched upon Martinez very briefly, and I just want to ask, when that yellow card and the penalty shootout happened, what was your immediate reaction? Like, did you know the rule? Like, what were you saying?
I don't think anybody did they, until after the game. We sort of stood there in the stadium in our little cage thinking, what on earth is he, what's he done? Or what has he said? Because he's clearly said something. And the ref, it kind of summed up the evening in general, because the referee had been quite pedantic all game, kind of to both teams. And you thought, well, something's going to give here. Someone's going to get sent off for something stupid. And it's kind of the thing Martinez would do in terms of, giving it lows to the crowd. And he does what he does, and he does it very, very well. He's the kind of person I'm sure opposition fans hate, but when he plays for your team or your country, you absolutely love him. So everyone's just sort of scratching their head going, has he been sent off or has he not? What's going on here? And then obviously we found out coming out of the ground that, okay, this is the rule, and fair enough. But there's no way he even realised that himself.
Yeah, like it's the most bizarre thing. I'm guessing he thought, yeah, I'm off. He was probably taking off his gloves and just
and Louise, who was the captain at that point, as McGinn had gone off, he sort of ran the length of the field to talk to the ref and going, like, what are you doing here? And then the refs obviously had to explain it to him. But it's what he does. When it goes to penalties, he's the centre of attention. And it was one of those nights where from the moment he came out to warm up, sort of 45 minutes before the game, he was getting absolute dog's abuse from their ultras, but he loves that. He lives for that sort of stuff, and playing in that atmosphere, etc. So it was almost written. The footballing gods were saying he's going to have the last laugh here, and did. But in the first leg, he was phenomenal for all the penalty heroics and the sort of the drama of that second leg. Actually, in the first leg, he made 3 absolutely world-class saves, kept us in the tie. So he was very much the sort of the difference between Villa going through over the 2 legs. Because Lille were very, very good. I was really impressed with them, actually, how well they did, because they came to Villa Park and they gave it a really good go, which most teams don't. They sit back and hope for the best.
Well, you've touched upon Villa's depth a lot, and I want to talk midfield with you right now. So Douglas Luiz, John McGinn are expected to be in midfield. Probably sort of a two-man midfield with help from the wings and the fullbacks. Maybe even Pau Torres and Ezri Konsa are very good with the ball in their feet, moving it forward. You guys love playing out from the back.
Torres is exceptional on the ball.
Absolutely. But what about depth in midfield? Because we just mentioned all the injuries.
Yeah.
Besides Luiz and McGinn, who else is it to play in midfield? I'm talking number 6 and number 8s, basically, here.
Well, it's challenging. You've got no Tielemans, no Kamara. They're 2 big players for us, especially Tielemans, who Kamara had the shirt at the start of the season, was very, very good until he got his injury. Tielemans had kind of, he tends to come in little spurts through the season. He'll drop off for a few weeks, then he'll come back. He'll drop off for a few weeks and come back. But he's been in really good form in recent times. Very, very good on the ball. A big loss, to be honest, in the first leg where, you really want to attack a team. He can dictate the tempo. I think Morgan Rogers would normally play out on the left and cut in. I think he'll be the difference. He'll probably have to come in field and play in the middle, which he's very good at, actually. I think that's where he prefers to play. Great ball carrier. In terms of the depth in midfield right now, though, it's been hit because you've obviously, you're two men down. You've got the young lad, Timo Rogbunum, who's, he was out on loan at QPR last season, did very, very well, but, coming in and playing in a semi-final of a European competition and potentially going away and having to play in that sort of environment is a huge huge difference when you've been used to sort of having little bits and pieces off the bench. You know, I don't necessarily think Emery trusts him as a main starter yet. So the sort of the main workload in this one is on McGinn and Louise, who've both had, you know, fantastic seasons, and they can control a game, and McGinn especially is our engine room, and he gives you endless amounts of energy and sort of thrust through up the field. And the impetus, as I mentioned before, sort of Torres is the guy who will start most of the possession off. You know, we will normally play along the back line. It will go to Torres, and then he will play through the passing lanes or play up to Watkins. So expect a lot of the ball in the sort of the Villa left back position. It's whether or not, I think it's certainly one of the battles will be really interesting for me. It'll be whether you guys go after and try and press the ball really hard, or if you actually just sit back and try and hit on the break. Because I think, as I said earlier, a few teams who've come to Villa Park tried to press on Pau Torres maybe too early in the game, and the whole team don't go. You open up a huge gap between your attack and defence. And in the middle of the park, if McGinn, Louise get on the ball, if Rodgers gets through the press, you're in trouble. Because I think as soon as the ball goes into sort of Diaby, and especially Bailey, teams are in trouble. You know, you've seen it endless amounts of times this season that Bailey's a real live wire this season. He's improved so much. He's probably our most improved player, Leon Bailey. He's really changed the dynamic of how we play. He adds a real sort of punch and an aggression to the way we play in possession now, because we've got so much pace and mobility across the front line now.
Well, I mean, when it comes to midfield right now, I feel like if Olympiacos started with a 4-3-3 formation instead of that 4-2-3-1 formation in Constantinople, which did them no favors, in my opinion, we would expect, obviously, Santiago Eze, who's something between a number 6 and a number 8, Chiquinho, pure number 8, and either Vicente Iborra, who is a number 6, or Andre Horta, who's a number 8. And the feeling is that if those three, I'm talking about a 3-man midfield, 4 players, basically, 3-man midfield, especially if Eze and Chiquinho have a really good day, either at a 100% or close to 100%, Olympiacos could have a right go, because Olympiacos' game really relies on pressing. It really relies on pressing right now. But at the same time, it's a 3-man midfield that helps, keeping the lines together, defense and midfield together, midfield and the forward line together. So I do feel like this is going to be the battle of the midfield on this one. I don't know how you feel, Chris. I feel like this is going to be the battle of the midfield, especially if Olympiacos bring it. Those three men bring it.
Yeah, it normally feels with Villa, if Louise and McGinn get on top of the game, most teams are in trouble. You know, we beat Arsenal in the second half, really, at the Emirates a few weeks ago, mainly because our midfield just flattened theirs, and it was because Tielemans, Louise, Louise didn't play, actually, he was suspended. It was Tielemans, Morgan Rodgers, and McGinn really got on top of them. You know, McGinn, when he was suspended, was a big loss for Villa, because he just gives you so much energy in the middle of the park, and the ball sticks. You know, he can sort of almost play like a hold-up player, but playing out from the back, so he can take the ball off the centre-back's turn, and he's into midfield very, very quickly. So I think you're right. I think it is going to be the battle of how aggressive do Olympiacos go, or how much do they sort of sit off Villa and say, okay, we'll let you have the ball at the back. We're going to stay solid. No, maybe we've got enough to hurt you on the break. And that's sort of how I think it might go. I don't necessarily think Olympiacos are going to be too gung-ho and sort of be overly aggressive, but they might pick their moments when to go, which Lille did really, really well, actually. Certainly in the first game at Villa Park, they kind of let Villa have the ball and said, well, all right, you can have it at the back. You can't hurt us there. But they sprung their press really, really well and knew when to go after Villa. The impetus is on Villa to kind of control this one.
I think you're spot on with what you're saying about what your prediction of us, because as Costa said, the press is something that we try under Mendilibar. We've tried to do quite a bit, and the away game against Fenerbahce, we sort of allowed them to have that. In the first leg, we sort of went out after them straight from the off. All 3 of our goals, or at least 2 of them, were off the press, like where we get pressed. We lost the ball and then we counter pressed, took the ball off them and scored. But in Turkey, we sort of took a slight step back and sort of allowed them to have the ball in those places, just like you said. So I think you've got that spot on. I think that's what's going to happen tomorrow.
And
they're going to
potentially
give them
a bit
the
of a chess,
respect
a bit of a
at the
chess match.
start.
Yeah, a bit of a chess match.
Yeah, definitely.
But how important? Let me give you our potential lineup for this game. We are going to have Kostas Zoulakis, the hero of Constantinople, between the sticks. Rodinei on the right. Let's face it, Dimitri, it's going to be Francisco Ortega on the other side. David Carmo and Panos Retsos at centre back. I expect Carmo to be on Watkins tomorrow. Our best centre back, Porto record signing, joined us on loan because he fell out with manager Sergio Conceição.
Right.
Three-man midfield, like I said, Eze, Chiquinho, and either Horta or Iborra. And up front, Fortunis on the right, Podence on the left, Ayoub El Kabi in the middle, spearheading the attack with, I assume it's going to be Konsa, because Konsa is very good in 1v1 situation. He's going to be on El Kabi. So I feel like it's extremely important that Olympiacos play a 4-3-3, because if they go back to the 4-2-3-1, they're going to suffer because of Fortunis and Podence's inability to track back. So I'm really worried that this is going to leave the fullbacks exposed. How serious would that be if Olympiacos go with that 4-2-3-1 and the two wingers do not track back? How much damage can Villa cause?
To be blunt, if you don't get on top of Bailey, Diaby, now Rodgers, you're in trouble. There's enough evidence through the season. Really, really good sides like City, got taken apart by Bailey. Arsenal got dismantled twice by him and Diaby. It's just our mobility. I think some of the physicality, perhaps you lose a little bit not having Kamara in the midfield, but you gain it. Obviously, McGinn's in there. You gained it by having Rodgers. Certainly in wide areas, I think Matty Cash, if he plays at fullback, which he probably will, but I don't know whether they might play Konza at right back and Carlos yet. I think Cash will get involved, and obviously Digne on the other side. He's not necessarily as attacking as Alex Moreno in terms of pace, getting to the byline and delivering, but his actual delivery from deep is much better, and he's a much more sort of steady and experienced player. But I think it is a midfield battle. I think if Villa win the midfield battle, I think you'll find it hard because the ball will just go out to Bailey and probably Rodgers on the other side, and that three off Watkins, which I think will be Diaby, Rodgers, and Bailey. They'll sort of interchange a little bit, and Diaby will just get into little pockets. He'll almost play off Watkins, so we won't necessarily play as a winger. Bailey will cut inside, Rodgers will roam around. So it's sort of three interchangeable parts. It's very difficult to pick up. And I remember Podence when he was at Wolves. He's great when he's got the ball and can make things happen, and quite an exciting player, I can imagine, for you guys to watch. Defensively, I think that's probably why he's back playing in Greece, and Wolves sort of didn't fancy it, to be honest.
Spot on.
Because I think the weekly intensity of the Premier League, a player like Podence is a little bit of a luxury, which I don't think Wolves could afford. But I actually really like him as a player. I think he's certainly one to watch. Then, of course, you guys have got a goal scorer who's been banging him in, as have Villa. I'm sure both backlines will be wary of the battle of the number nines, as it were.
Well, it's funny because we've been talking for 50 minutes and we barely mentioned Ollie Watkins, one of the two best English strikers in the Premier League. Him and Cole Palmer, but let's remember that half of Cole Palmer's goals were penalties. So
Watkins doesn't take penalties.
Exactly. All of his goals were real goals, actual goals.
Yeah.
You mentioned El Kabi. We can tell you that El Kabi's goal-scoring prowess comes from deliveries. So he needs Fortunis, he needs Podence, he needs the midfielders to feed him. Watkins, he does need that. He does need that from those amazing passes by Luca Dean, those amazing passes by Douglas Luiz. I mean, it's so great how you play out from the back, and with three passes you can find Ollie Watkins, and then he just finishes.
He has pace as well. He has pace.
Yeah, he's really
he does
quick.
have pace.
That's the big thing.
I would like to tell you quite quickly what we know about Olympiacos' most recent training. They worked really hard on the pressing, obviously, counterattacks, set pieces, and a huge priority is putting Ollie Watkins out of commission. Obviously, what I mean, not knocking him out, but just keeping him quiet, making him absent, like Erling Haaland has been in the last few game weeks. What kind of effect does it have for Aston Villa if, let's say, Olympiacos managed to keep Watkins quiet? How does that hurt Villa's game exactly?
It depends really on what kind of day you've got Bailey and Diaby on. This is the good thing with Villa now this season, that I think if Watkins doesn't get you, there's 3, 4, 5 other guys who can. Whereas maybe last season wasn't the case. Was Bailey, if you look at his stats, he will nearly always either assist or score. Diaby sort of comes in bursts. You never quite know what you're going to get from him, but if he's on a good day, he's devastating. McGinn, Louise from midfield, if they get involved. Rodgers is kind of the new guy on the scene. He scored 3 and 3 at home. He's a really dynamic player and probably one that you guys wouldn't have seen a lot of. Very, very good player. He's really surprised everyone, actually. I think if Ramsey had been fit, he probably wouldn't have got the games that he has this season, but he's kind of come in and had to play. And he's been like a duck to water, really, in the Premier League. Nobody quite knew if he was going to make the grade and thought, well, maybe he's one for next season or the year after. And he's been great, really. Once he got 2-3 games under his belt and a bit of Emery coaching, and he knows his job, he's a real threat now. Because he's such a powerful runner. He's so difficult to stop. I think Watkins is much more pace and movement, and he'll occupy a back line. So whether you guys play 2 centre backs, he'll occupy both the centre backs. Bailey's much more of a sort of 1-to-1 player. He'll take on the fullback. Rodgers, there's been moments this season where it's taken 2-3 guys to stop him because he's such a powerful runner with the ball. While he's not sort of lightning quick, he's a big lad. He's physical. Very, very difficult to stop. That's going to be an interesting battle if your guys get sucked into trying to stop him, and then there's a spare man, I think. And I do wonder in this one how involved Louise and or McGinn will get, whether they'll both be given license to get involved or whether they'll have to sort of just stay back a little bit. That's been the big loss with Kamara, who would normally just sit in front of the back line and control the tempo of the game and let McGinn and Louise get involved. One or other of those guys is probably going to be shackled ever so slightly just to make sure, we're a little bit more solid on the break. But Watkins has been a huge player for us this season, and he took a little while to get going actually in the season. But then once he got his first goal, he hasn't really looked back. His finishing's improved. I think he's almost simplified his game because he obviously used to drift out to the left a lot and play more like a winger. He plays like a proper number 9 now, and I think it suits his attributes. And he can make his own goals, but it's not all on Watkins. But I think if you stop him, I think it goes a long way to blunting Villa. But we're not a one trick pony anymore.
Is he going to win the Golden Boot in the Prem? Do you think?
I mean, I hope so. I hope so. He's been kind of lingering around 18, 19 goals for a little while now. He's due one, to be honest, which hopefully comes tomorrow night. David, who I sort of co-did the podcast with, David had been saying for weeks that if Villa are to achieve what we want to achieve, you're going to need Watkins to get into the 20s, which he's one away from doing that. His form in Europe's been really good, actually. So I think he's a threat. It's funny, you mentioned sort of set pieces, and it's a really interesting dynamic, that one, in this game, where Villa are pretty deadly from set pieces, but we're also our own worst enemy defending them. We conceded from near post corners against Lille in both games. And I think that's probably an area where potentially, if you guys don't have a lot of the ball at Villa Park, you'll still feel relatively confident you can cause us problems, especially obviously with a number 2 goalkeeper coming in.
Before we go to predictions, I personally have one last question, and you kind of jumped the gun there, Chris. What worries you ahead of this encounter against the opposition you're about to face?
I hope it doesn't come across arrogant, but it's not a fear of the opposition. It's more a fear of, if you look at how Villa have tended to concede goals in the Premier League, it's not all that often we concede a worldie. It's more Villa playing themselves into trouble. Sometimes Villa are their own worst enemies, and that's probably because of the way we play, and we really do stick to our game plan. For better or for worse, Villa play the way they play. When it works, it's very difficult to stop, but when it doesn't work, we sometimes find it difficult to pivot and play a different way, and that can be a little bit of a worry because it wasn't working in that away leg against Lille, and we didn't really change. We just stuck to it, and we limped over the line, frankly, on penalties. but it wasn't very convincing. So my fear is that sort of if Villa get bogged down in the game, a few teams, Newcastle especially, Chelsea, Tottenham, they went man-to-man on our midfield and were very pragmatic, but went man-to-man on our box midfield. So when we're trying to play out from the back, we had no passing lanes to play through, or it goes up to Watkins very quickly. Watkins' game isn't really a traditional number 9 as a target man. That's not the way he wants to play. He wants to play on the shoulder. So I think it's whether you guys can knock us out of our rhythm. I think if Villa get into a rhythm in the home game, it's a difficult game for you. I think if you guys come out aggressively, not necessarily in terms of attacking, but in terms of a press that can really stifle Villa, you can make it quite difficult for Villa. And I think that's probably why, while we were sort of devastating in the end of last season and the first half of this season at Villa Park, since Christmas, our home form has dropped off a little bit. And I think that's because teams are a little bit more pragmatic now. They turn up to sort of spoil the game and break our rhythm up. And that's always potentially a worry against a really well organised backline or a really well-organised midfield who aren't necessarily trying to be too gung-ho, but they pick their moments when to go and press or when they want to counter-attack, like Lille did. Because frankly, Ajax kind of over both legs, especially in the Villa Park game, their press just fell to pieces. Once Villa got the first goal, they were like, well, do we stick or twist? Do we chase the game? Do we not? I think having the away leg first obviously helps you guys because it probably means you don't have to chase the tie at Villa Park too much. You can kind of stay in it, stick to quite a rigid game plan, probably backing yourselves to try and get the job done in the home leg. Villa, obviously, the impetus is on us to go back to Greece with a lead and preferably a good one. So it's, if anything, my fear is us.
So play like Lille, basically, like they did in the second leg.
Be very, very aggressive in your midfield press, and there's probably a little bit of be quite brave. I think if you're brave enough to go after Villa, knowing that there's a chance you could get ripped apart, but it's almost like a high risk, high reward game plan, and similar to how Villa play, obviously, because we play out the back and we try and play through teams. If it works, teams are in trouble. When it doesn't, we're not going to start punting it into the box and playing long ball football too much.
I think we are going to do that, but I think we're going to do that in the second leg.
Yeah, I agree.
I think the first leg is what we said earlier. Definitely take a slight step back and play.
Yep.
Allow you guys to have the ball at the top.
Yeah, and probably I think because of how some of your away games in Europe have gone this season. I know you've had, a couple of, you obviously lost in, was it Freiburg, and obviously West Ham.
Freiburg.
Freiburg
was tough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, West Ham. We didn't deserve to lose. It was 1-0. It was a great goal from West Ham, and we were decent. I thought that game had a draw written all over it. So if we play like we did against West Ham, I reckon it could be another.
Would you guys take the 1-0?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. Like I said, I think this is a really good pass for predictions right now. What do you think, Dimitri?
I agree.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Chris, let's have it. Let's start with the guest. How do you see the Villa Park game going? What do you think the final score line is?
I'm going to say you'll score. I think it'll be 3-1, but you'll get a goal. I can pretty much guarantee that you'll score with our back line the way it is at the moment.
Oh wow, he hasn't seen our back line yet, has he, Dimitri?
Or is it going to be like? Or is it going to be like the? Is it going to be like the knockout round where it's like 5-5 in both games or something crazy?
Oh my God! Please no!
I don't think my heart can deal with that, man.
I'm okay, man. Dimitri, prediction, my friend.
I always give two predictions when it comes down to these things. When we play against a team that is bigger than us, so I'm going to give more my what I believe the score is going to be and what I hope the score is going to be. So what I think the score is going to be is exactly what you said, 3-1, because I see us scoring, but I can't see us keeping the deficit down, unfortunately. However, my hope. So my heart is telling me, my mind is telling me 3-1 to Villa. My heart is telling me 1-1.
Oh, right. Dimitri, that's overconfident.
That's overconfident.
Overconfident. 1-1 is overconfident.
That's what my heart is telling me. I'm not. That's what my heart is telling me. But realistically, I think we'll score, but I can't see us keeping the deficit down. If we keep it to 2-1, brilliant, fantastic. But 3-1 and above is where I see it, unfortunately. We'll see. Costa?
Well, I'm confident as well because, there's something with this new manager, Jose Luis Mendilibar. He knows what he's doing. He is a fixer. That's why he won the Europa League with Sevilla, even though they were in terrible condition. That's why he turned everything around at Olympiacos. Also, what Olympiacos did with Maccabi Tel Aviv, this is the kind of thing only good European clubs do at this stage in a European competition, where they take a horrible defeat and they actually, not only do they win, but they turn it all around on its head and they go through. I'm going to go 2-1 Villa. But as you asked, Chris, would we take 1-0? Of course, we would take 1-0 because I truly believe that if Olympiacos manage the score line, if Olympiacos go back to Greece with only a 1-goal deficit, then I honestly believe all bets are off.
Is there a confidence over there that you guys over sort of two legs can get the job done, or is it very much hope, or I don't know? No, is the expectation that, well, we really need to win the league and be back in the Champions League next season, or is this sort of an adventure? Or is there sort of an expectation that the league will take care of itself, but we want to win a trophy as well?
This is where a lot of Olympiacos fans differ.
Right.
This is a sticky point, because I have a feeling Costa and I might differ on this as well. Because as Costa said earlier, we're spoilt, right? We've won the league so many
Endlessly.
times, 47. I don't even know how many I've seen in my lifetime. Like I was
47.
in our podcast last week. I remember saying I think we've won it 12 times in my lifetime, but I think it might be more. It might be about 15 to 17 times that we've won it in my lifetime. It is more times. Maybe even more than that. It might be nearly 20. It's insane. So, look, personally, if we manage to win the Conference League, I couldn't give a shit about the league. I'm not going to lie to you, Chris. I want them to, if they go at Villa, if they get a result, and then somehow we win this thing, oh my God. It might.
Is there the added bonus that obviously you can do it in a rival stadium if you get to the final as well?
Oh yeah, I mean,
yes. Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
If we win a European title in Ajax brand new stadium that's only been for 2-3 years, in the year that they're celebrating their 100-year anniversary, my God, it's gonna be iconic. It's like you winning it at Birmingham City's ground. What is it, St Andrews?
Yeah,
is that
whatever they call it this week?
Yeah, it's like
they keep selling the naming rights to make a fiver.
It's like winning it there on a special anniversary in a brand new stadium. Like it's. I mean, we're never going to let them live it down. Like even if they beat us for the next 100 years every game in a row, we'll just be like, well, yeah, but we won a European trophy in your ground.
Okay.
They'll have nothing on that.
Whereas is the other half of the fan base very much, we need to be playing back in the Champions League next season?
I'll let Costa answer next time.
Well, I mean, the answer is the same one that you gave us. You got to go for both because, if you don't think like that, well, that is a bit of a loser mentality. Obviously, Olympiacos are luckier than you because they have the weekend off before the second leg. So after the semifinal is over, then they're going to play their 3 derbies. So the Greek Federation has helped there.
I mean, it's Easter. I think so. It's not the Greek Federation in this case. We don't play over Easter in Greece. So this one
played on Monday.
This one isn't the Greek Federation. Right. Don't give them credit.
You're right. Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Sorry, I work every day. I have completely forgotten the dates and everything. I feel like the safest thing I can tell you right now, Chris, is Olympiacos have no reason not to go for it. Because I do believe that if they manage to eliminate Villa, there's no reason to believe they cannot do the same with Bruges and/or Fiorentina.
If we beat Villa, we're winning it. If we get to the final, we're winning it.
Doucement. Steady on, my friend. Steady on. But the biggest priority right now for Olympiacos is to not finish 4th, because if they finish 4th and Aris win the cup against Panathinaikos, then there's no Europe next season. Olympiacos 100th-year anniversary. So they're going to go for both of those things. They're going to go for both. But if you can't win the European Cup, which you highly likely, it's highly unlikely that you can win it, then you go for the league. I don't know. Hopefully, I made myself clear.
Yeah.
So, guys, I feel like we are way past the hour. Chris, you have been amazing. Guys, absolutely go and check Chris's incredible podcast, My Old Man Said. Chris, can you tell everyone here how they can follow your amazing work on your podcast and your music?
Well, the podcast is at My Old Man Said. We're all over Facebook and Twitter and all the usual places. My music, my stuff is at Bud_music on Twitter or at Bud Music on Instagram and across all available streaming platforms.
Absolutely, my friend. Well, guys, if you haven't done so, please do like and subscribe. Let's keep this family growing. Let's keep spreading the word. If you haven't done so, join our Patreon group for as little as $1 per month. Check out our merchandise, and do not forget, for all of you guys going to Birmingham on Thursday, say hi to Dimitri, say hi to Chris. Be nice to Chris. He might even sing you that song, My Old Man Said. He might actually sing it for you.
Don't you worry, you'll hear it from the whole end.
Well, we want to hear it from a musician, singer, and songwriter. That's something we would like to try out. So, Chris, again, thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you for having me.
We do hope to see you very soon.
Thank you for having me, guys. Take care.
Cheers, Chris.